Welcome to my lunch hour. I'm Energy Man Stan Osserman from the Hawaii Center for Advanced Transportation Technologies. I'm getting it down. It's only taken me 2 years. We're excited to be here again. Nice, cool fall day. The weather's getting good. Not as much air conditioning being used, so Ray Starling's really happy with that. He's liking to see that all that energy conservation going on. So today we have a little bit of a different kind of a guest. More of a peer guest than an expert guest, but somebody who I work with closely and attends a lot of the energy activities that go on throughout the state legislature, the state government, federal government, civilian private sector, non-for-profit. So we're just going to have a talk about energy and mostly how it relates to transportation. So today's guest is Rachel James. A young lady who works in the federal building and focuses a lot of her time on energy issues. And she just started school at the University of Richardson School of Law, University of Hawaii, to get a law degree in environmental law, correct?
That is the plan.
And we're encouraging her to do that and make a future in Hawaii to make Hawaii better with our environment and our energy. So welcome, Rachel. And how about starting off by telling us a little bit about what your background, where you're from, what kind of exciting things you've done in your life, and what led you to energy as a passion in your life?
Okay, well, thank you for having me on the show. I grew up in Arizona, a small town next to a military base. It's called Sierra Vista. And living there for 18 years, I traveled around a bit, but ended up landing here in Hawaii. And what I found unique about Hawaii is the abundance of natural resources and just the great opportunity here for people to live very sustainably, and the necessity to do so as an island state. So that definitely piqued my interest. But growing up in a desert, I was used to a bit of scarcity and certainly abundance of solar resources. So I was familiar with energy and kind of just the idea of doing things better if you know how to do it better. So Hawaii, the conversation seemed to be robust here with people speaking about doing things better, but also really having access to the intellect and the experience to really explore what that looks like. And so having the opportunity to now work in a congressional office, I'm able to interact with people on a variety of levels. So constituents, like you mentioned, small business owners and private sector, nonprofit, really anybody who'd like to give me information. I'm able to speak with them, and I've learned a great deal about the opportunities here in Hawaii. And Hawaii has been home for me, and it's been good to me, so this is my opportunity to give back. And so energy, to me, is a pretty sure way to do that.
Well, you know, some of the advice I used to give folks when they first moved to Hawaii was, don't try and tell us how you do it in Phoenix or how you do it in Idaho or whatever, because we really don't care. But when you get here, get into the local culture and get into the local issues. And you've gotten into canoe paddling and all other high energy kind of forms of ocean activities. And that's actually kind of one of the areas we started talking about in the show was how we used to just think of energy as electricity or gasoline or electricity and diesel. But now we really think about it. I mean, you've done a Molokai crossing, right?
Yes.
Energy.
Yes.
That's personal energy. I mean, when you start to get into the energy world and what we do, and you're immersed in it, you start to see energy all over the place. I had Dr. Kroc here from, he's doing OTEC. He's one of the folks that started the ocean engineering system at University of Hawaii, the school there. And he's kind of the pioneer in ocean thermal. And we started talking about thunderstorms and how thunderstorms lift so much water, so many thousands of feet in the air, and how much energy that takes. And it's all around us. It's energy that's here all the time that we just don't even think about. Well, he condensed it and said, well, a lot of that energy that we can do in a couple thousand feet of ocean takes tens of thousands of feet in the air. So that's all we do at OTEC is it's kind of like the same concept of ocean thermal changes and heat rising and falling, giving them power to make electricity from the ocean. But you get a different sense, a different awareness when you get into energy issues, and especially in Hawaii, because like you say, you're surrounded by it. And one of the places that we share time is the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum.
Yes.
And they just had a meeting this week to talk a little bit about energy issues. Why don't you give me some of your impressions of how the Energy Policy Forum went and some of the things that came up in discussion?
One of the things that most struck me was the real push to get more people involved and aware. And as you mentioned, with energy being so ubiquitous, I mean, really, it's everywhere. Helping people to understand that energy not only impacts them, but they can have an impact on it as well. And I think that, for me, was a takeaway message, is just that people can really impact a system that truly surrounds us all. And it's unique to see how people can engage in that system. And so speaking with people from various sectors of energy, having the people from refineries there, having people with renewable energy, with Ray Starling discussing energy efficiency. So just all those different inputs from various sectors, and having that be at a very high level with the people who are kind of in the weeds of it, being able to have a discussion to figure out what to share with the layman and how to make that relevant for them. I thought that was pretty empowering. It was a good discussion, and that's my big takeaway from that.
Yeah, because, you know, again, in my world, I'm immersed in energy and transportation all day long. So for me, this stuff just it just comes at me full speed. But for the layperson, the person that's got a busy day job working someplace like you do in the federal building, with a multitude of different constituents coming to talk to you and things like that, you'd probably spend about this much time thinking energy.
Right.
And when you get those people that are focused on energy together, and they can help narrow down the priorities and help focus the discussion, makes a huge difference. And one of the main reasons that we do the Energy Policy Forum is to focus, especially policy and future legislation, and to crosstalk and interconnect with like Hawaiian Electric, the State Department of Transportation, the Energy Office, the folks at Hawaii Gas that do petroleum. They're public utility, but petroleum related instead of electricity related. Get everybody together to talk and see how we interface. And one of the concepts that came up during the discussion, and I was really happy to see that Mark Glick mentioned it and Scott from HECO mentioned it, was the fact that we no longer have a transportation sector and a grid.
Right.
They have started to merge and work together. And for me, that was like a watershed moment for this week, because it's been so long that I've been harping on the fact that I can't do hydrogen vehicles until we start looking at energy in a bigger picture and infrastructure included, including the grid.
Right.
And so those discussions started to come out. And you sat in on the transportation side with Mitch and a lot of us on transportation. What were some of the highlights from the transportation sector that we harped on, or that you can recall?
A big highlight is setting a transportation goal for the state as far as energy is concerned. With utilities, goals, and timelines, we don't really have that for transportation. And I think that's a big part of helping people become more aware of just how much energy does touch them, and understanding how transportation and utility and energy, kind of in a general sense, aren't dissimilar, how they are very much intertwined by their very nature. But it will be essential for them to be intertwined as we move forward if we're going to make really any impactful change in Hawaii that's lasting. So for me, that was the big takeaway, was just identifying that goal so that we can lay out the steps to reach it.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at a couple of the studies that have already been done in the original Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative goals that were set out. And we're going to try and validate some of those pieces in there. And the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum transportation section will offer that up as that's something that we need to put on the table. That's something that we need to forward out there to the public. And you know, it was funny. I mean, to me, it was funny when we're going through the discussions. We have all these specialists that, like you say, they focus on energy all day long. They're getting into the weeds on everything.
Yes.
And at some point, you got to go, stop. We're not sending this goal out to PhDs, and we're sending it out to John Q. Public.
Yes.
They don't care whether there's a 0.5% difference here or there. Let's pick a good number that's in this ballpark and focus on it and say, this is our goal, and how do we measure it to get there? I mean, it doesn't have to be surgery. It just has to be like a good hack with a good chop, a good hatchet or something, and say, this is the chunk we want to take off. Because right now we've had the Clean Energy Initiative for how many years now, and transportation hasn't moved off the mark. And I'm not sure that it actually hasn't moved, but we haven't measured it.
Right.
Like, what are we measuring in the transportation goal? We haven't even figured that out yet. Because we've definitely had more hybrid vehicles. We've definitely had more plug-in electric vehicles, but we haven't moved the mark any. Why? You know, so we need to find that particular entity, that gestalt, that piece that we measure that goes, oh, this gives us a good idea whether we're headed the right direction. And that seemed to be focused on are we moving the needle on fossil fuels? You know, whether it's a plug-in electric car that's electricity off of fossil fuels, or whether it's using gasoline or liquid natural gas, or where does that liquid natural gas come from?
True.
I think one of the things that I thought was really neat about Hawaii Gas and their participation this week was that they talked about talking to the counties about their methane that they get off of their landfills and their wastewater treatment plants. Because again, you know, the governor made this big pronouncement about LNG is not on his radar right now. He's not looking at that too closely. And I think that kind of was a shocker for a lot of people. But Hawaii Gas was really creative, and they said, well, is it the import part or the fossil fuel part?
Right.
Well, if we make our own methane here, we have to get rid of it because it's a greenhouse gas that's really nasty. So if we can do something with the stuff that we have here already, then that's good.
Yes.
It's a good fossil fuel thing. So, and that seems to be where Hawaii Gas is focused on that. And that was really encouraging for me, because that even impacts me in the transportation side. Because one of the things you can do with methane or CH4 is strip off all the hydrogen. It's C and 4 hydrogens. Get them the hydrogens out of there and plug them into a car and start running a fuel cell is really exciting to me. So that was one of the things that struck me as being you know, neat about what Hawaii Gas is doing. Well, I think we're about ready to come up on a break. So we'll take a 60-second break and get back with you shortly.
Okay, I'm Jay Fidel, that's Ray Starling. We co-host a show called Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. It's really interesting. You know, Ray has a way of unzipping these guys. He asks them these questions and all this stuff tumbles out, and we find out stuff we would never know about without Ray's questions. Thank you, Ray.
You're welcome, Jay. I'm very pleased to be your Ed McMahon every Wednesday at 4 o'clock here on the internet. So you can join us and see what's happening in the energy world, and there is a lot going on. So join us every Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, come around, be energized right here on ThinkTech. Aloha.
Hi, my name's Cindy Matsuki, and I host the show High Growth with HTDC on ThinkTech Hawaii. This is the show where we talk about all things tech, innovation, entrepreneurship, and manufacturing, because there's so many things going on in Hawaii and more people should know about them. So this is the program that you can come and find out about all the things happening in Hawaii. And this show also airs on Olelo 54 along with ThinkTech Hawaii. And it broadcasts live every other Tuesday at 3 p.m. So don't forget, check out the show Tuesday, 3 p.m. every other week. High Growth with HTDC. Thanks.
Hey, welcome back to Stan the Energy Man on Friday, the 8th of October. Wow, it's October already. Halloween's coming. What are you going to be on Halloween? Do you know yet?
I'd like to be Billy Idol.
Billy Idol?
It's because I'm having a karaoke costume party. So.
Okay. I don't know what that has to do with energy, but it just came out of my mouth, so.
Okay.
I've got Billy Idol here. And Rachel James from Federal Building talking to us about energy. And we spent a good part of our week this week at the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. So, you know, my understanding is that they try and get a pretty diverse group of folks together, talk about energy issues, and try and develop policies that our lawmakers can put into state legislation and how we can focus. Were there any other big issues from any of the other groups that came out as important to you from the Energy Policy Forum in terms of looking at potential future legislation or funding or any focus areas that, I know outreach was a huge piece.
It was. That seemed to be the consistent concern. But then also, in a funding perspective, really trying to identify unique ways to fund research and development and really implementation and infrastructure building to help make sustainable energy more accessible across the state. And so there were a few ideas about that, and taxes and raising taxes obviously comes into the conversation. And just really understanding what legislators will be amenable to and what they would consider and where funds can come from and how we can ensure that they go to their appropriate purposes if we do identify a source. That was a good bit of the discussion.
That's true, and one of the people that was really excited to see at the forum this week, and quite frankly, I've developed a really great relationship, and I know you have too, is Ford Fujikami from Department of Transportation. I mean, he's a really exciting character for me, and I know he's got his hands full with the Wilson, or Leaky Highway and the Wilson Tunnel this week, and other issues. Every time there's a traffic jam, he seems to be getting poked in the chest with it, but he's a super individual, and I've learned a lot from him. And on the funding side, you know, he's showed me areas where he gets funding directly from other resources that he actually controls from cradle to grave. He can take that. He's got limited boundaries he can use it in, but he knows he has this funding and he doesn't have to go back to the legislature for it. And that's kind of opened my aperture a bit on the transportation side, because he's the transportation guy. And one of the projects that we're working on together is we'd like to take the shuttle buses that move people around the rental car agencies, and he's going to consolidate that into one contract. Instead of having all the rental car companies do their own shuttling, he's doing it under one contract at the airport, and one company will deliver everybody to everybody. Well, he's already agreed that we'll start looking at hydrogen fuel cell buses for that. So I have a timeline that I'm working out with him, and some funding that we know is set, because he's already committed to it, that is going to help us get hydrogen fuel cell buses into the state in a certain timeline. Now, my play is I have to make sure he has the hydrogen that's going to go in the buses, so that's something I'm working out with him. And then I've been working with the Foreign Trade Zone, and those folks are, David Sicknick over there is interested in putting some PV on his Foreign Trade Zone roof. And I know he's going through a bidding process on that now, and he's got things to work out. But he's interested in having hydrogen fuel cell forklifts. And this all plays really nicely into the working group that was stood up as a result of House Bill 1296 and the Hydrogen Implementation Coordinator, because in our working groups, we talk about leveraging that other side of the thing, not transportation piece, but the farms, the backup power supplies, and the forklifts and things like that can run off hydrogen. So I'm through the state agencies and the working group and the Energy Policy Forum, I'm starting to network with people that help me think about how to make all this stuff happen without necessarily going back to the legislature and asking for a bunch of money, which is kind of an exercise in futility in my mind. It's unless you have a lot of time and a lot of guts, you're beating your head against the wall asking the legislature for a bunch of money right now. So it's kind of neat. It's exciting time, and Ford has been just super working with me on transportation issues. When we talk about the outreach piece, do you recall any of the issues that we talked about in terms of specific ways to get the word out, or to where we should be focusing on the outreach?
Well, this show is one of the mentions. So doing more of these and having more people from the forum come and share. But then also just trying to figure out how people best receive information. And not just the pass-by information, but the information that sticks, that motivates people to do something or to be engaged or to want to do more. And so one of the things the marketing group, I guess, spoke about was perhaps doing newsletters and things where people can opt into receiving like regular updates, and having those updates be specific on certain areas of energy. So if one week is transportation, if another week is how to be more efficient in your home, and just kind of having the different experts in the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum contribute to that regular cycle of information updates.
So like posting on that week when their area is focused, they would generate the awareness piece, that document.
Right. There was some discussion of that. I don't know that each group concurred, but that idea was thrown out.
Okay. Yeah, one of the areas in outreach that is a challenge for me is the social media piece.
Yes.
Because, you know, people in your generation grew up with social media or understand it. And I'm an analog brain in the digital world, so for me, social media is a little bit scary, and I don't deal with it real well. So that's why Christine in our office does social media for me, and she does the Facebook stuff. But I think she provided us with some of the links, and I've got one up on the screen right there. We have a website that you can go to for HCAT through HTDC, and there's also a website out there we have that goes to the hydrogen hydrogen implementation working group.
Okay.
We picked up a website that we used to use for hydrogen implementation, and we cleaned it up, and we're modernizing it. And there's some great links out there. And Christine helps me on the Facebook and Twitter side,
Right.
and I pull links and stuff, and she brings some in, and we throw them on that website so people can just tap into the web page and start looking at stuff. And there's some cool stuff out there, like there's actually a fuel cell that powers a cell phone.
Oh,
the thing
wow.
is like the size of a postage stamp.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Wow.
And things like I know that during the energy forum this week, they mentioned that the solar plane that came from
Yes.
Japan to here. And I couldn't help thinking the whole time that it's down for battery repair now. If they only had a fuel cell in
Right.
there, it'd have been so much better. But there's actually some stuff that Boeing's doing for ISR, Intelligence, Surveillance, Reconnaissance, that has fuel cell powered airplanes that stay up 10 days at a time.
Oh, wow.
And that's the kind of thing that I gets me all cranked up and excited when I see the new technology coming out. So we try and put all this on our webpage and have links to it so people can look. All kind of transportation issues. There's a company called ITM in Europe that stood up their very first hydrogen fueling station for vehicles that's provided their hydrogen all by wind power.
Oh, wow.
And they put out a big press release, and we put that on the website so people can look at it. Because a lot of times here in Hawaii, although we have all these renewables you talked about, they're falling all around us.
Right.
But we don't really understand how it all fits together until you see it.
Yes.
Once you see the picture and you say, oh, well, they're doing this, and here's how it works, here's what the station looks like, then it makes sense. So all this outreach stuff's important.
Yes.
And I think the one thing that struck me at the forum was we need to do a multi-pronged approach.
Agreed.
The social media, the web pages, newsletters. I mean, some of us are worse than analog. We're back in the stubby pencil thing, and writing notes and sending hard copy
Yes.
things in the mail. But it all has an impact. It all takes time, and we got to start now. We have to start that information going out now. So I think it's time for another break, and we'll be back in 60 seconds.
Aloha, I'm Kirsten Baumgart-Turner, and I host Sustainable Hawaii every Tuesday from 11 a.m. to 12 noon. My guests offer insights on challenging economic and environmental issues facing our state and offer innovative solutions to increasing Hawaii's long-term sustainability. Recently, we've been focusing on sustainable land development, food, and energy security. If you have a project or issue you'd like to discuss on the show or would like to be a guest, please contact me at kirstenbturner@gmail.com and tune in live weekly or view the show at your convenience at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.
Aloha! How you doing? It's me, Angus McTech, wishing you to welcome and join us to see us on Hibachi Talk on ThinkTech Hawaii. Join my co-hosts, Gordo the Tech Czar and Andrew the Security Guy, every Friday from 1300 to 1345. We look forward to seeing you. We'll talk tech and we'll have some wee bit of fun. And remember, let your wing gang free wherever you be. Aloha!
Hey, welcome back to our Energy Friday and Stan the Energy Man and our energy advocate, Rachel James.
Oh, I like
from the
that.
Federal Building.
Energy advocate.
Zuri thought of that. I didn't think of that.
Good
I have to
one.
fess up. She's got the patent on that one. But that was a really busy day at the Energy Forum. We talked about communication and putting the word out. We talked about, and the whole outreach piece, we talked about transportation, and we talked a little bit about infrastructure as well. And, you've been to a bunch of these energy forums and meetings and discussions that we have with the Energy Office. What are some of the things that stick out for you in terms of the whole grid? I don't want to get into a whole NextEra discussion, but I mean, talking about like the grid and how the grid does interface with transportation, and so maybe some things that you think are really critical that we have to be thinking about for the future grid and renewable energy, the pluses, the minuses, maybe resiliency, things like that. Can you just tell us what
Sure.
struck out. Okay.
No, the thing that comes to mind most readily is necessity for integrated systems, and that isn't really how we've planned thus far. And so as we move forward and as we establish infrastructure and as we look to see kind of what's good where, I think all planners really have to think more in an integrated framework, just because it's going to be a necessity for there to be success here. But I think there's also great opportunity to think in ways like that, to be a really confined system that's almost like a redundant system that's essentially self-reliant, because that small application can be scaled up. And I think that scalability is something that's unique here in Hawaii. We have this urban core, but we also have a good number of rural communities. And so having an integrated system that can apply in both of those settings, I think is a unique thing. And we have all that intellect and experience, and in many cases, the technology is already here to really look at what that can be.
Okay, let's take a tour of the islands, because I know that,
Okay.
that your work right now, actually, you touch the neighbor islands quite a bit.
Yes.
Why don't you just give us a quick snapshot of each island and maybe what's kind of unique to them about their energy issues? Start with Kauai and work your way east.
Kauai is unique. You're going to test my geography here. I don't know
I'll
if
help
I'll
you
go
out.
in the right order.
You can skip a while.
Okay. Kauai is unique with their work, well, because they're their own utility, that's one big unique thing. But that gives them great flexibility in looking at how they can really change their system, and really what the people there want, they can immediately put into place for the most part. And so with them looking at some of those waste to energy opportunities, I think that's unique, and looking to recapture off gas from their landfills, that's happening on Kauai. And that's my familiarity there. You may be able
Okay.
to fill in some gaps.
No, that's important, because, you know, we've had some public meetings on the NextEra merger and things, and I think people were shocked when the Big Island had their like town hall, and all the people started driving the discussion from the merger discussion to doing what Kauai is doing
Yes.
for having their own
Yes.
co-ops. And I think that surprised a whole lot of folks. Well, in the middle there, we have Maui County, which is Molokai, Lanai, and Maui. So what are some of the things you see there that are kind of unique?
Maui is unique. I think Maui is unique because of, and I'm probably going to botch some of the details of this, but just looking at smart grids and integrating that transportation piece, and being able to capture some of that extra energy, and then working internationally on that project. I think it's a really unique opportunity with UH and just the US in a general sense. That is what remains pretty much in my head regularly when I think of Maui. But they also have the wind opportunities there, and in that same way, looking at how to maneuver in an integrated system.
How about Molokai?
I'm not familiar with what's happening on Molo.
It's agricultural. It's a lot of very independent people that, I mean, they're like your true frontiersmen in Hawaii, and I see them as a really great place to look at agricultural infrastructure for renewable energy. And I think that if we could come up with some models for the typical 40-acre farm plot and give those folks a model and say, here's how you'd set it up so you could be energy sufficient on your own,
Right.
and let them try that model out, they could maybe demonstrate it for the rest of the agricultural communities around the islands and maybe the rest of the Pacific. So they'd be a great test bed. And then you have Lanai, which is a privately owned, for the most part, privately owned island with a big resort community on there, but at the same time, agricultural and rural.
Right.
And you've got the control. If you think Kauai has control,
Yeah.
they've got
Yeah.
their own, they're basically the owner of the island. They can do what they want.
They have a fiefdom.
And then how about the Big Island? What are some of the things you notice about the Big Island?
The Big Island, well, when I think of the Big Island, I think of Hank Rogers and his farm and all the fantastic things that are happening there. So that comes most readily to mind. But then I also think of Nelha and the things that they're doing over there in Kona. And so the Big Island has big opportunities and people really doing a lot of the testing work, a lot of the proof of concept. And so I think much of what can be applied probably in all islands, I feel like much of that can be found on the Big Island.
I agree. And some of the things that strike me about the Big Island are, number one, it's big.
Yes.
No need to say that, it's called the Big Island, right? But that presents its own challenges in terms of a grid, because you lose a lot of energy when you're pushing
Yes,
power out a
yes.
lot. So for a lot of the smaller communities, maybe they shouldn't be on a grid. Maybe they should be isolated and islanded and be able to work on their own.
Right.
And the other thing is, the one place that has more of all the renewable energy that you can think of is the Big Island.
Yes.
So the Big Island could actually be a net energy exporter to the rest of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Because here on Oahu, I think somebody during the energy forum mentioned that if you wanted to put solar on all of Oahu to make enough power for everybody here, it would take up 40% of all the land mass that we have on the island.
Oh, wow.
And that's like, we're not going to do that on Oahu.
Right.
But if the Big Island could tap into geothermal or wind or solar or a combination and then put it into some form, maybe hydrogen, not that I'm prejudiced, but maybe hydrogen, and ship it to Oahu, there you go. Now
Right.
you have an export-import within your own state, and the money stays in your state and keeps generating revenue and makes jobs for people. So the Big Island is kind of a unique place, and I too am a big fan of Hank Rogers and Blue Planet Research over
Yes.
there and all the things they do, and NELHA.
Yes.
NELHA is doing some of the ocean thermal,
Yep.
which, you know, to a lot of people, that's like cutting edge stuff. But to folks like Hans Kroc, who came and talked to me a couple of
Yes.
weeks ago, that's like old school.
Yes.
And it's a really solid base load. The one thing that makes solar and wind such a threat to a grid is the
Variability.
instability, the variability. And that ocean thermal is just rock solid, steady
Yes.
power that you can count as base load power. That takes a whole lot of the worry out of the grid operators because now
Right.
they know they can count on it.
Yes.
So that's one of the things I think that really strikes me. The Big Island is kind of way ahead on a lot of the energy issues because they're motivated, they have the resources,
Right.
and they have it at a scale where they know they can make it work.
Yes.
If they can't make it work on the Big Island, it ain't working any place. So they've got it down, they've got it
I
wired.
agree.
We're getting close to our wrap-up time.
Oh, heavens.
Yeah, already. It's hard to believe. Time flies when you're on the
Shucks.
stand, the energy man. I know, it's pretty amazing. But is there anything you want to say to the folks in Hawaii? And believe it or not, people from around the world watch this show.
Oh, goodness. Hawaii's where it's at.
There's probably people that stay up at midnight in Africa just to watch this show.
That's great.
Yes, I'm sure of it. I'm almost certain. At least one person.
Okay.
Because they email me sometimes.
Okay.
But is there anything you want to say to the folks out there about energy? And if your big wish for what Hawaii could do in energy?
Hawaii is where it's at, and I believe that in my heart that Hawaii is the place where really not only the solutions but the people to bring about like really implementing change that can be exported around the world. And so we have the intellect, we have the resources, we have the drive, we have the wherewithal, and just we have all the things that really are needed to create lasting solutions. And I think that's a unique thing. And I feel like if the world were to take anything from Hawaii, they can take that. And the spirit of aloha, of course, but I think that's what allows us to be so creative here.
I agree. We start a lot of cool things in Hawaii. Surfing,
Yes.
windsurfing, kite surfing. Wiki is, you know, people think Wikipedia. It didn't come from somewhere else. It came from the word wiki in Hawaiian. Hawaii's the place. We're going to
Hawaii's
start
the
it out
place.
here. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Stan.
Thanks for joining us this week on Stan Energy Man. We'll see you next week, Friday, on my lunch hour. Aloha.
I didn't say that having me on the show.